Coming up on this week's edition of the Kev BKA Beloved Show, we got a combine recap, catching up on the NBA, and I'm going to mansplain women's basketball. But first, thank you everybody for tuning in. Do not forget to follow, rate, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Leave us 5 stars. How you not going to leave us 5 stars if you're rating? Don't be a hater. Come on now. We're going to start with the NFL Combine recap. First, I just did my mock draft last week before the Combine. I will not be updating it until after free agency for multiple reasons. One, there was nothing this past weekend that would have changed any of my picks outside of maybe Kool-Aid McKinstry's Jones fracture they discovered in his foot. But most importantly, I think free agent signings are going to have a lot more impact regardless as to what happened at the Combine. And before we get to individual performances, I just want to say this quick kind of broad statement about whether the Combine matters or not. First of all, the Combine will always matter because this is NFL. Everything matters in the NFL. There were a lot of people that were upset that the top prospects, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, et cetera, decided they weren't going to participate in the Combine, some to more extent than the other. We'll get there later. But guys, I think y'all forgot how this NFL marketing shit works. It's about the shield. Regardless of who is there, it is about the shield. As much as I love Caleb Williams, the league has been here long before him and it'll be here long after. That's how the NFL works. So in essence, yes, the Combine will always matter, regardless of who's there. Especially because the Combine at its best should confirm what you see on film. Prime example, Xavier Worthy set the Combine record with a 4.2140 time, which I'm not here to discredit because a lot of y'all are very weird with the, oh yeah, he ran it, but what's the difference between running a 4.21 and running a 4.25? About $5 to $10 million, because he increased his draft stock simply by running a record-setting 40. The analytics nerds have made their way in the Combine analysis saying this is like if someone that weighs such and such amount of pounds were to run this much amount of fast. I don't care about that. This guy is the one who owns the record. We're not going to discredit that. Stop being corny. This is supposed to be fun. But with Xavier Worthy, you watch his film and it's like, yeah, pretty damn fast. Anyone who said based on his tape they're going to be able to predict that he was going to break the 40 record, you're a liar. There's just no way you can predict that based on anything. Like, that's unfathomable about a speed. But shout out to him. That was easily the best moment of the weekend. Another thing that confirmed what I saw on film was Michael Penix Jr.'s throwing performance, and everyone there was like, wow, Michael Penix throws an incredible ball. Look at how accurate and on time and the perfect spiral and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, I'm sitting at home like, okay, so I guess I'm the only person who watched Washington games this year. I guess I'm the only one who went to watch his all 22 after the season, because I just don't understand how you could watch Michael Penix for even 10 plays and not leave with that takeaway, regardless of what you saw on the Combine field. Again, it was incredible to watch. I'm happy he put that on display for the entire world. But you should have known that coming in. Michael Penix throws an incredible ball. That's why in my mock draft last week, I had him at QB4 and I got him going in the top 10 because he throws an incredible ball. He's incredibly accurate, and the medicals came back clean so we can stop with the injury concerns. He's fine. Lastly, I told myself I'm not going to crap on any prospects based on their Combine performance, but JJ McCarthy, it was inescapable that he struggled throwing to the left and throwing deep in the Combine drills. Even though a lot of media members are trying to pretend like he didn't, we have eyes. We saw it. If you look at his passing charts when he was at Michigan, yeah, that just about confirms what we saw, which is why, again, I have Penix ahead of him. Because y'all are trying to project that JJ might be able to make these NFL throws that Michael Penix has already shown that he can make. And on Saturday, that was on full display for everyone to see. The next thing that really stood out to me from Combine weekend was, I talked about this in a podcast, gotta be a couple months back now, about the evolution of the pass rusher versus the pass blocker. All right, so keeping that in mind, remember when Jadeveon Clowney was the #1 overall prospect in, 2014, 2013? And we thought he was a generational, once-in-a-lifetime physical specimen that we've ever seen. Well, the #1 edge rusher in this class is Dallas Turner, who has better numbers than him in every single category. 40 time, Dallas Turner runs a 4.46. Jadeveon Clowney ran a 4.5. Dallas Turner had a 40-inch vertical. Jadeveon Clowney had a 37.5-inch vertical. Broad jump, he got him beat by 3 inches. Dallas Turner is 2 inches shorter, and it looks about 20 pounds lighter. Arm length is about a 1/4 inch shorter. Roughly same measurables, give or take a couple inches and a few pounds here or there, but the point still stands. What we thought was out of this world, alien-esque, you must take this guy first overall because we never know we're going to see this again, is now commonplace in the NFL. Dallas Turner is going to be one hell of a player on the next level. He's my number one defensive player on the board, but he's not going to go first overall. And because of how good the offensive players are in his draft, he might not even end up being a top 10 pick. But to the rest of the edge rushers, there are 5 edge rushers that ran a 4.6 or faster. Dallas Turner, who we just mentioned, Chop Robinson, who ran a 4.48 at like 260 pounds, which is insane. Mohamed Kamara, we'll talk more about him later, ran a 4.57. Jared Verse ran a 4.58. And Chris Braswell, who is the other edge rusher from Alabama, who ran a 4.6. Imagine your other edge rusher ran a 4.6, and he's coming out. It's ridiculous. The fastest offensive lineman was Roger Rosengartner, the offensive tackle from Washington, who ran a 4.92, who, for those of you who are going to go back and watch him based on his combine performance, just don't watch the national championship. It'll be better served for all of us if you don't, especially for him. Just ignore it, move on past it, pretend like it didn't happen. But for reference, there were 5 defensive tackles that ran faster than that, and Drazon Newton didn't even participate in the combine, and he probably would have been faster than that too. I say that to say, obviously 40 times are not the perfect measurement for athletic ability, but it's a pretty damn good one to say, hey man, these edge rushers are getting better and leaner and stronger and faster. Meanwhile, offensive linemen are they're about the same. And this is one of the best offensive lineman drafts we've seen in quite a while. Still, when you look at the physical measurables against their opposition, it looks a little rough compared to them in the light. It just does. We're gonna do the combine winners. Again, I'm not really gonna get into the losers here. Big winners were Michael Penix and Xavier Worthy. I feel like those are self-explanatory. You be the best, you put on the best throwing performance at quarterback, and you set a record in the 40, you leave as a clear winners. Number 1 with a bullet. Next, we got Brendan Fiske, the defensive tackle from Florida State, who ran a sub 4.8 40, the fastest among defensive tackles. Looked fantastic in every single drill, and it shows up on tape. He's explosive all the time. Every single play you see him. High motor player. He definitely helped his draft stock out a little bit. Especially when you compare him to Byron Murphy II from Texas, who, although he did not have a bad combine, did not have a great combine. Especially when NFL Network thought they were slick and they started doing the side-by-sides and the simulcams when they showed them both running the drills at the same time. The gap was just very noticeable. Next, we got Quinyon Mitchell, who went out there and ran a 4.3, and he just keeps on making himself money. Since the Senior Bowl, he's improved his draft stock from early second rounder to, quite honestly, if he goes top half of the draft at this point, I would not be surprised. And now the argument between him and Terrion Arnold at cornerback 1 becomes a legitimate one. Although Nate Wiggins ran a, 4.29, 4.28 40, something like that. At 173 pounds, I don't know if you could comfortably put him at cornerback 1. Terrion Arnold ran a 4.5. That's perfect for him. That was about what you expect. But now with Quinyon, with the Senior Bowl and with the NFL level speed, you can now put the lower level of competition doubts to bed because, all right, we now have all the evidence we need that he can compete at an NFL level against better competition. He has the tools and he's shown the ability to do it. So whoever comes off the board at quarterback 1 is interesting, but Quinyon has now officially put his hat in the ring for that. Big winner for him. Next, we got Mohamed Kamara, the edge rusher from Colorado State. If that name sounds familiar to you as a casual, the Colorado game, the double overtime game that everyone watched on ESPN, he had 2 sacks and 2 tackles for loss before he was ejected in, I believe, the 3rd quarter for targeting this year. His career stats at Colorado State read as such: 45.5 tackles for loss, 30.5 sacks, and 5 forced fumbles. He's more of a power rusher on film, an undersized power rusher at that. He's like 2 55-ish, give or take. But to watch someone who relies more on power go out there and run a sub 4.6 was like, whoa, okay. Didn't know you could do that one. I was looking around at draft projections and scouting reports, because after I went to go watch this film, I'm like, why isn't he higher on most boards? Because you'll hear most people say edge rushers, there's a steep fall off after like the third or fourth one, which I just flatly disagree with. I've seen people say he goes as low as 6th round and as high as early 4th. I could see him going mid-second to like early 3rd. Now that may be me projecting a little bit too far ahead. You look at the production, you look at the physical measurables, and I don't know how you can turn away from that and think, okay, we could get a lot out of this guy when it comes to the NFL. I think he's going to end up being a very good player on the next level. Last winner is Joe Milton, specifically his deep ball, which for whatever reason divided the internet. It was between the Fun Police and the That Boy Nice crowd on Twitter. I tend to be somewhere a little left of center towards the That Boy Nice crowd, because you saw the film, you seen Joe Milton's film at Tennessee and even early in Michigan, and you're like, all right, the guy has a great arm, not much else. Unlimited arm strength, very limited accuracy, right? But then you see the highlight film throw where he effortlessly throws 75 yards and then does the look away, finger gun to the sky, look real cool. And honestly, we could have left it at that. Look real cool. But the first thought that a lot of people had when they saw it was, oh, but why wasn't he this good at Why wasn't he this good? Why didn't they win anything in Tennessee? Why is the numbers this blah, blah, blah? I'm just like, dude, we could just enjoy the 10-second video of a deep throw. And no matter what side of the fence you think you are on for his deep throw, I guarantee you that video is going to get him drafted higher than you think he should be. Just wherever you currently have him slotted, move him up at least a good 20 picks, because that video is going to get it done. If it comes down to him, between him and some other mid-rounder quarterback, they're going to take him based on that video. They're like, yeah, but look at the arm. Look at the arm strength. So those are my biggest winners of Combine weekend. The last point I have to address is the slander of the top prospects, of them choosing not to participate in the combine drills to more extents than others. Now, I'm a known Caleb Williams defender. I will continue to be so. For him saying, I ain't gonna do no medicals here, I ain't throwing, I ain't running, I'm gonna sit here, we gonna take these pictures, I'm gonna do all these social media videos, do my press conference, and I'm gonna get up out of here. And then the first question he dealt with was by some fantasy loser online. I forgot the name of him, some loser. That first thing he said when he got up to the podium was, are you scared of competition? Is that why you're running away? Well, yeah, that explains why he doesn't want to do it, because he's scared of competition. Every single game he had to go out there, and if his team didn't allow 45 points, he won. But hey, scared of competition. Number one prospects not participating in combine drills is not a new thing at all. It's been happening for at least a decade now. Now, the not doing any medicals, that's very new. Even that one caught me off guard a little bit. When I was like, damn, all right, Caleb, I knew you weren't going to come out here and throw, but to do nothing? Okay. But then I thought about it, and this is after he said, yeah, I'll do medicals when I go to the team visits. I'm only one player. Only one team can draft me. There's only one of me. So why do all 32 teams need to see my medicals? And then after that, I thought about it, and I was like, he's right. Why do the Kansas City Chiefs need to know what Caleb Williams' cholesterol levels are? Who gives a shit? Who cares? And on top of that, Peter Schrager brought up this point on his podcast. I think it's called This Season. I could be wrong, but Peter Schrager, Good Morning Football, Fox, NFL Sundays, blah, blah, blah. Y'all know Peter Schrager, NFL Network. He said, this is the first era of the NIL superstar, where you're no longer dealing with a starving college kid. Caleb Williams made $12 million last year. Yeah, he doesn't have to do the dog and pony show if he don't want to. And by all accounts, he's going to be the number one pick. Worst case scenario, he's number 3. Absolute everything has gone to shit. He is number 3 pick in the draft. Yeah, I ain't going to sit out here and do all this dog and pony show shit either. I'm sorry, I'm just not. And I know there's a lot of the crowd out there that already has their preconceived notions of Caleb Williams, and they're calling him a diva. And I saw a lot of people talking about his dad, which is always a step too far for me when you start talking about people's families. That's just a line I personally don't cross. Especially when you're basing it off a few excerpts from a GQ article that either 1, aren't real, or 2, most of you didn't actually read. That's a story for another day. I just don't get it. With the Marvin Harrison Jr. piece, him choosing to not do any damn thing, Like, I ain't going to no press conference. I ain't doing no measurables. I'm not even coming. But if you think about it, what more do we need to know about Marvin Harrison Jr.? There were reports he's not going to do his pro day this year. Well, duh, because he did one last year already. For CJ Stroud's pro day, it was him and Jackson Smith and Jigba were the receivers out there. And the number one headline leaving CJ Stroud's pro day was, everyone else looked pretty good, but oh my God, Marvin Harrison Jr., I can't wait to see him next year. What more does he have to prove? He doesn't have an agent or this, that, and the third. I'm like, yeah. His dad's in the Hall of Fame. He doesn't really have to learn much about the draft prospect. He doesn't have to learn shit. I think he'll be fine. That about wraps up my combine thoughts. We're going to move on after the quick break to the NBA catch-up portion, and we'll be right back. So if you're like me and you've been caught up in the NFL bubble for the past 6 months or so, and you've completely missed everything that is going on in the NBA, don't worry, I'm here to catch you up to speed. In between all my draft research and coverage and all that there, I've been peeking in the NBA. I've been able to spend some late nights on League Pass, digging through advanced stats and all that fun shit. And I got just big headlines that all you really need to know to be caught up for the playoffs. Ready? Number one, the Boston Celtics are on pace to be not only great, but historically great. But nobody believes in it because they're currently on the Dallas Cowboys plan, which is, all right, we'll believe it when it happens in the postseason. This is one of those years that is not going to be looked at great historically until after they win the championship. But until that happens, no one's going to believe in it. They currently have a net rating of 11.6 that puts them ahead of the 2017 Kevin Durant Warriors and right behind the 72-10 1996 Chicago Bulls. They have an 8.5 game lead over everyone else in the Eastern Conference. They are the definitive one seed in the entire league. They just finished beating the dog shit out of the Golden State Warriors. We'll talk about the Warriors a little bit later. But the question that is always going to arise is, are they that good? And as a Celtics fan, I've always had this analogy. Being a Celtics fan is like raising a child that has a full scholarship to Harvard and is also addicted to crack. It's both sides. And right now is a long stretch of sobriety with graduation about 3 to 4 months away. We are now second semester of senior year. Your crackhead child is not done crack for months, and he's been sober. He's been killing all his classes, been calling every day, in good spirits, in good health, all the rest of the analogy, however deep you want to go with it. That's where we are, but in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, what if they relapse? Please don't relapse. You're almost there. Just stay the course. Because the Celtics are prone to crackhead behavior. This same team was down in the first half to the Detroit Pistons at home in the middle of their undefeated home streak. They're not nearly as three-point reliant as most of the NBA media would have you believe, but they're still pretty three-point reliant. A lot of that not being as reliant on the three-point shot is on the shoulders/knees of Kristaps Porzingis, who, as much as I love watching Porzingis play, let's face it, is not the most durable player in the world. Honestly, a lot of people don't have all the faith in the world of Joe Mazzulla. He's in the position of, all right, he has the best winning percentage of any coach that has played their first 100 games, like historically great. That's good on paper, but again, until he shows it in a big game, no one's going to believe in it. But where I will give Joe Mazzulla credit is, regardless of how this season ends, it has been clear to me just how raw of a deal he was dealt last year. Because I don't believe he became this much better of a coach over the course of a year. Experience, yeah. But the fact that he didn't have an actual coaching staff around him last year, I think is pretty damn important. I think the fact he didn't have an actual offseason to prepare to be the head guy as opposed to being in the second row bench of coaching and then thrusted into being the head coach within the manner of one cheating scandal, yeah, I think that did him a huge disservice. So now that we get to see what Mazzulla ball is really all about, we're seeing the results on the court. And the fact I've gone this long without talking about Jason Tatum, I deserve hats off and kudos for that. God damn it. I really do. The Jason Tatum conundrum is the way that most of NBA media and fan views him has always been confusing to me, but here's the new iteration of confusion. You cannot tell me that Jason Tatum cannot be one of the best players in the league because of his playoff failures, and we're really only talking one failure, which is the finals, and then also in the same breath tell me that players that haven't even won a single playoff series are better than he is. That's not how that works. The numbers are slightly down for him this year. Yeah, because we're integrating a 7'2" behemoth into the starting lineup that's averaging 20 points a game. Yeah, numbers gonna have to go down a little bit. Is that not what we say we want from our star players? Do we not ask our star players to sacrifice their numbers for the good of the team? And when they don't, we call them selfish and ball hogs. Well, the Celtics are by far the best team in the league right now. His numbers are a little bit down, and there's people saying Jason Tatum might not even be a first-team All-NBA guy, which is nonsense. He's the best player on the best team in the league. First-team All-NBA is supposed to be the floor of what happens with that player. At worst, you're a first-team All-NBA, and at best, you're MVP. I'm not even going to sit here and argue that he's the MVP because that'll just be blatant homerism, and quite frankly, I don't believe that. But still, the point still stands. So to summarize, the Boston Celtics are the best team in the league, but as far as championship-level greatness, we're not going to know that until they win it all, unfortunately. That's the territory that the Celtics are in. It's if they don't win it all, they're going to be seen as frauds. There's no in between with them anymore. Quite honestly, there's no other team in the Eastern Conference we're talking about. The Bucks are in disarray. Even after they hired Doc, somehow a lot of their problems got worse. Dame Lillard isn't the same player he used to be. The Cleveland Cavaliers are currently the 3 seed, but no one really believes the Cleveland Cavaliers as good as they look on paper. The Knicks look like a Tom Thibodeau special. Jalen Brunson just hurt his knee. OG Anunoby has been out for a while. He just had a surgery. We'll see what happens when they all come back together and form like Voltron, because I think they're going to be a tough out for anybody, but, we'll see. Everyone else in the East are not even worth mentioning by name. All right, now for the Western Conference. This is where things get a little more fun. The top 3 teams for the Western Conference are all separated by half a game apiece. So in essence, they're all tied for the 1 seed. Those 3 teams are the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Denver Nuggets. We're going to do a quick breakdown on each. Oklahoma City Thunder, the main headline is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is having a 31.2 point per game season on damn near 50-40-90 shooting. He is 55, 38, and 88%, which is ridiculously efficient. Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren are about as good as you would ask for second and third options. The big problem with this team is, dear God, they are so small. It is inexcusable that they did not trade for a center or try to get a buyout center at the deadline. It's so crazy they didn't. They are second to last in rebound percentage, only ahead of the Wizards, who are the worst team in the league. And their 3 best players are all 25 and under with 0 playoff experience. Minnesota Timberwolves. The headline for them, Anthony Edwards is having a career year right now and is surrounded by a team with the best defensive rating in basketball. Big problem, offensively. What else? If Ant-Man has a rough shooting day or just an off night period or God forbid doesn't play, who else on that team scares you offensively? I feel like we've seen enough of Karl Anthony Towns so we can definitively say he's not that guy, right? Okay, cool. No one else on that team averages more than 14 points. The closest I think is Rudy Gobert with 13.4. So unless they're going to go out there and win rock fights like the 03 Pistons, if Ant-Man doesn't go out there and score 30 plus every single playoff game, it'll be a real short run for them. Then the third team, the Denver Nuggets, and of course the headline, they have the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic, the current frontrunner to win MVP, which will be his 3rd. He is averaging a very casual 26, 12, and 9, and somehow isn't top 20 in usage rate, even though I feel like he always has the ball, but he doesn't always keep the ball. It's weird. It's one of those you have to watch to really get what that means. And when Jamal Murray decides he wants to play like an all-star, they're unbeatable. Like, that's not a joke. Whenever he scores more than 24 points a game, they are 14-0 this season. Problem is, they've played more than 60 games, and he's only scored more than 24 points 14 times. Will that change in the playoffs? That kind of leads into my big problem. Are they in cruise control, And what does Gear 2 look like in the playoffs? Because I'm torn as I'm watching them sometimes. It's like, all right, are y'all just cruising through the regular season? Because I would hope that after winning one championship, you don't already feel like you've arrived enough to the point where you can just, all right, regular season, we're good. We don't got to worry about that. But let's say they are and they try to hit that second gear in the playoffs. God forbid that gear gets stuck or it just doesn't work. And now they're down 2-1 in the conference semis and they're trailing the middle of the fourth quarter. Dear God, now what? Now, they're still my favorite because when you have the best player in every single series, you should be the favorite. But it's really hard to repeat. And right now, they don't look like a team that's on a crash course, nonstop tour de force tip-off till the end of the game every single night. But they weren't really that last year either, so I'm really torn on how I see the Nuggets. The team that's 2.5 games back from that one seed is the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Harden trade seemed to have been working out well because, you know, Ty Lue is one of the best coaches in the league, and he figured it out. But as far as their playoff hopes, you're asking me to rely on Kawhi Leonard and Paul George's health, which never happens for that team, and Russell Westbrook and James Harden's playoff performances. Can't do it. Can't do it. Can't do it at all. And what would an NBA segment be if you don't talk about the Lakers and Warriors? If I told you before the season that Anthony Davis will play 62 games so far for the Lakers, having arguably his best season as a Laker, LeBron James will be averaging 25, 8, and 7 in year 20, and they are currently the 9 seed. You would look at me like I had 3 heads. But that's what's happening right now. For the Warriors, who are currently the 10th seed, their struggles have been pretty well documented across all networks, so I don't really have to rehash them much. They look like they figured out the Jonathan Kuminga and Klay Thompson conundrum out. I think they finally settled on, okay, Kuminga has to be our second option. Klay's not second option point of his career anymore. He's been a little better recently. I do think the kick in the face that the Celtics just gave them might be the wake-up call they needed to be like, all right, it's time to lock in so we don't miss the play-in altogether. Because if you give me the Warriors in a play-in game type scenario, one game, win or go home, I'm still taking the team with Steph Curry on it, regardless of who's on the other side. And then we got Victor Wembamyama, who is 21 points a game, 10 rebounds a game, 3 blocks per game. And if he didn't put the fear of God in the oncoming scores, every time he's even in sniffing distance of the paint, that number might be doubled. He is coming. Every single night, he is getting better and better and better. Victor Wembanyama is on the way. If the Spurs even halfway tried to put a team around him this offseason, they would be in playoff contention right now because he's good enough already to make them a playoff team if the rest of that roster wasn't dog shit. He's coming. Last point I want to make about the NBA season is Jordan Poole and the Wizards, because I'm just so sick of hearing this. At what point are we going to stop blaming Draymond Green for Jordan Poole no longer being a good basketball player? At what point is Jordan Poole going to be accountable for the fact that he is not a good basketball player anymore? How long are we going to keep on blaming, oh, well, Draymond punched the star out of him? That is a grown-ass man. Jordan Poole is a grown-up. If he can't handle one punch to the face almost 2 years later now, and it is still affecting him psychologically, either go to therapy or retire. One of the two. There's no reason this should still be affecting him this much later. I'm so sick of hearing it, bro. I'm sick of hearing it. All right, quick break and we'll get to the last point of the day. I know I said I was going to mansplain women's basketball. Pitchforks down, torches down. That was just to get your attention. I'm here to talk. I'm here to discuss. I'm here to have a dialogue. That's all I'm here for. I've always been a fan of the women's basketball game, right? Ever since I saw Maya Moore on TV for the first time, my jaw literally dropped, and I was like, with each bucket, the misogyny was just leaving my young body. It was amazing to watch. Like UConn Maya Moore, even though she was incredible for the Lynx as well. Like, for y'all that weren't watching for the Maya Moore era, please do yourself a favor. Go watch Maya Moore. She's incredible. In my eyes, still the best. I always say she's the coldest woman on 2 feet. I know the Cheryl Millers, Lisa Leslie's, and Diana Taurasi, Sue Birds, blah, blah, blah. Maya Moore is my personal GOAT. But that, and I'll tell this quick anecdote before I get to my actual point. Freshman year of high school, I moved to a new county, so I didn't know anybody there. It's very important for this story. It was the first week, and I was in gym class, and I don't know how 13-year-old Kev found himself in a conversation with this woman who was just chilling, shooting a basketball. I was a little bit of a shit talker back then, as I am now. And somehow, some way, my shit talk led to me playing this woman one-on-one to 11 points, make it take it. When I tell y'all, I never touched the ball because halfway being a gentleman and a dickhead, I say, oh no, ladies first, you can have the ball first. Check ball. She got to 11 points before I got to 0. In the first 5, she did not move and kept hitting the jump shot. And then the rest of them, she just put me in the mix and kept getting to the bucket. Completely foot to ass, full blown whoop my ass performance. That woman was Brene Bones Mosley, who was the star basketball player at Paint Branch High School. I did not know that at the time. I found that out like 15 minutes later. Ended up getting a full scholarship to University of Maryland. I know she played in the WNBA for a while, I believe for the Indiana Fever. And once again, with each bucket, the misogyny just left my body. So I say all that to say I've always been a fan of the women's game. I'm not going to act like I'm deep analytics, deep research, full-blown Monica McNutt breaking the game down from every angle. I'm not going to act like that, but I'm a fan of the game, right? And with the growth of the women's basketball game that has undeniably been happening over the past year, 2 years or such, I've noticed something about women's basketball fans that I feel like I have to bring to the forefront. Women's basketball fans treat newcomers the way that guys treat women who say they're into sports. Like, oh, you like women's basketball? But what color were Aaliyah Boston's braids when she won the national championship at South Carolina in 2022? Like, well, okay, relax. They're new here. Now, that doesn't say that as you're a newcomer to the women's game, you don't owe it to the people who've been here to not come in and try to make yourself an expert in the field. If, for example, we talked about Maya Moore earlier, if you don't know who Maya Moore is and you've never watched her dribble a basketball once, yeah, you should probably go discover that. But at the same time, if you're really invested in the women's game growing, instead of coming out with your pitchforks to the people who may not be the most well-versed in the women's game, should you not, I'm not going to say baby them or hold their hand through it, but be like, hey, I see you're interested. Let's point you in another direction. For example, Dan Orlovsky, and he's a unique case, and we'll get to why later. He went to a UConn's basketball game. He said it on First Take. I think it was either last Friday or last Thursday. He was like, wow, I can't believe how good they are. Now, he went to UConn during the Diana Taurasi era, so that one's rough. That one, little tough for you to be at UConn during one of their most historical runs and just never make it to a women's basketball game, ever. Instead of piling on him, wouldn't it have been better to be like, oh, you like physical play? Cool. Why don't you go watch Don Staley and them in South Carolina? They play pretty goddamn physical down there. I'm sure you'll love it. Why don't you go watch Alicia Pillai at Utah? She's pretty goddamn physical. You'll love her. I feel like that's a better way to facilitate the growth of the game as opposed to this pitchforks, knives out instantly. I just don't feel like that helps. And as far as the growth of the game, I think what really gives people a more pessimistic view of the women's game is the fact they're comparing it to the modern NBA instead of comparing the point that the WNBA is now to where the NBA was at the same stage of their development of leagues. So the WNBA is 27 years old. The league was founded in 1996, but they didn't play their first game until June of 97. So for all intents and purposes, 27 years old this year. So instead of comparing it to the 2024 NBA, compare it to the 1976 NBA, because that's the point it's at. And in 1976, the NBA was in disarray. The 70s era of the NBA was the cocaine era, was the abuse era, poor public image. There is the league 2 black Sports Illustrated articles. Games weren't on TV. The finals were on tape delay. There were 4 separate teams that are facing financial bankruptcy. If you've seen the show Winning Time, the reason why Jerry Buss was able to buy the Lakers was because they were facing bankruptcy. Now compare that to the WNBA or women's game in general. Every time Caitlin Clark steps on TV, she's breaking every single record. By the way, salute to Caitlin Clark for breaking Pistol Pete Maravich's record for being the all-time leading scorer in college. Enjoy that record now, because Juju Watkins is on yo ass. We'll cross that bridge 3 years from now when she gets there, but not the point. That's according to Forbes. Every single record she breaks, TV ratings, attendance ratings, They had their first game of the year at the football stadium at Iowa. And that's in Iowa. No shade to Iowa, but y'all know what I'm saying. Last year, March Madness set records on every single ESPN platform for the women's game. The 2023 WNBA Finals had their highest viewership in the 20 years they've been on ESPN. So when the NBA at this point in their development was in the literal gutters and facing bankruptcy, the WNBA is at its highest point almost 30 years in. And no signs of slowing down at all. If you think about it, not only are they ahead of schedule from a pacing wise, we can look anecdotally as well, because the equivalent of Caitlin Clark and even Angel Reese for LSU would be the Magic and Bird thing when they came into the league. And that's what propelled the NBA to being a more televised brand and being able to be marketed a little better, right? Well, your Magic and Bird is on the way, WNBA. Caitlin Clark already declared she's coming out. Angel Reese has not declared whether she's coming back to LSU for a 5th year or not. I'll be honest, I'll be surprised if she does. But Paige Becker said she's coming back, so who knows? Juju Watkins, we got another 3 years of her at USC, and then she's going to go to the league. WNBA already has superstars with their aces. Arika Gumbawale. Candace Parker will be back off injury this year. The stars are already in place. Everything's there for the WNBA to continue to grow. And like Maya Moore said on a College Game Day, ahead of the Ohio State-Iowa game this past Saturday, which can't believe Maya Moore came out the house. That salute to Caitlin Clark. I don't know how you pull that one off. Maya Moore don't leave the house for nobody. She's always said, all you got to do is get the women's game in front of people and people will flock to it. God damn it if that's not true. And to bring it all full circle, putting Maya Moore in front of me was what made me a fan of the women's game. The moment I saw her, I was like, oh yeah, I'm in. So to put a bow on this probably incoherent rambling, that hopefully I'll be able to edit into something that makes sense. The women's game is set to grow exponentially, and by the end of the decade, I would be shocked if we don't have superstars all over the place, right? But as new fans come in, there's going to be a lot more Dan Orlovsky moments like we saw, where it's going to be a lot more stupid shit said. It's going to be a lot more dumb fans set coming in. It's going to be a lot more casuals. And because the women's game fans are so niche and they're such a tight-knit group and they do know so much in detail when it comes to these players, these teams, and this history, I know it can feel a little hard to let these guys in. But if the game is going to grow, they're on the way. Think about how shitty NBA discourse is right now. At some point, that is going to happen to WNBA discourse. If you think it's bad now, just wait till we start getting Kelsey Plum Muse and the stand pages for Angel Reese and all that. They're like, it's coming. It's on the way. So I'm just preparing you now. With growth comes stupidity. And to an extent, you got to welcome it with open arms. All right, that concludes today's episode of the Kev BKA Beloved Show. Don't forget, like, follow, subscribe, rate, all that fun shit. And I'll catch y'all next week.